The original idea of inviting you was this coexisting in the same person of a doctor and acupuncturist, which for many of us seem to be like almost opposing worlds. Um, the mic, so it's pointing at you a little bit. There, perfect. So maybe start from the first one. It's a very mythical role for us, the other people, yeah, the doctor. I think of my parents' generation, and the doctor was definitely a figure of authority. Who becomes a doctor?
That's an interesting question.
Yeah, because it's both a lot of responsibility, but all the doctors that I encounter, they seem to have had a calling, unless it's the family tradition, which sometimes is overlap. But what brought you, at least, to become a doctor?
I've been asked that before, and I never really know what to answer, because for me it wasn't ever really a question. It was my passion from childhood onwards. I was always very keen on, well, maybe as an explanation, I was born and grew up in Tanzania, but my parents, when they went there, they were both doctors, and they started working in a little district hospital in the middle of nowhere, in the just to the south in Tanzania. And so basically, I was growing up with medicine, or just the illnesses and treatments being my natural everyday life. So I would see a lot of ill, sick people and people with difficulties, and then the treatments that have been done not only by the doctors in the hospital, but mostly also by the witch doctors and the whole environment around it in the African community. Illness is seen a little bit differently, and everyone involves themselves. So the family comes and helps, and then only in the worst case they would go to see the doctor. So I was kind of growing up in this environment, being confronted with illnesses and diseases which other children probably don't have so much as myself. And all I can remember is that from the beginning onwards, ever since I can think, I always wanted to help people, and I walked around with my own little bag of tools and to help others. So anytime anyone would fall or hurt themselves, I would rush up to them and try to help in whatever way possible. And it wasn't so much about medicine as such, or the as you say, this sensation of being a doctor, becoming an authority figure, or anything like that. It was, for me, the most incredible thing about being a doctor or becoming a doctor is the capacity to learn and evolve in a way that your whole being and everything you do is um, in a way for the best of all the people around you, to help and support the growth of and the health and the beings of the ones that surround you in that way.
How did your parents feel about the other type of medicine when they were there?
They were very open to it, and especially, well, Western medicine in Africa, and especially in those rural areas, is very difficult to implement in a way that most people don't have that access. They don't have the money to go to doctors, and also through knowledge and experience and this different way of community living, and also religion and spirituality and all these things. Most rural areas trust more in their witch doctors or their community workers, let's say it in that way, because there's many different types of medicine. And so my parents actually, when they went to Africa, they took up a project in order to reach more people in rural areas, to help them in the most natural way possible. But in order for people to trust the medical system, they started working with the witch doctors and trying to implement their ways of being in their own medical treatments in order to be able to access
Okay.
the people a little bit better and to support them in a more
But they
natural
still
way.
found value in it, even though they came from, let's say, a more
Yes,
scientific.
yes,
Yeah.
always.
Okay.
That was
Not
from
just cultural value, but therapeutic
a
value.
therapeutic value as well, yeah.
Okay.
There's always, I was always, well, ever since I know about medicine, I was always had a very holistic view on it because I've experienced a completely different lifestyle before I went to work in the German hospitals. And so I see a big value in the Western medicine, but I also see its limitations. And I believe the most important is to see each individual for who they are, for what they need, and everyone reacts to things in a different way.
Do you think we accomplished that, or do you think that is because there was a time where the family doctor would take a bit more time and they would know who you are, but we are losing that a bit, no?
Yes, yes. Yeah. Actually, I mean, Western medicine is, it's a very, has very good methods, very good things that we can do. And by now we've evolved in a way that we can help people survive, where in the past it was very clear that without the medical support they would die. And even in Africa, I've seen that a lot. The life expectancy is way lower. We have many more infectious diseases and things that in Europe we have already been able to fight. And for us Europeans, it's
We don't even
there
think
are
about it.
things that
Yeah.
we don't even think about anymore, and they become our lifestyle because we do not have to fear certain illnesses or certain issues because we all have access to the Western medical treatment. Whereas in rural areas in Africa, Southeast Asia, in South America and things, the people who do not have access to it, obviously they do have less life expectancy and they have more difficulties. They have chronic diseases, they have chronic issues and consequences to illnesses that for us in the Western world, it's almost incredible that that still exists, that people do not have the same options as we do. So in that way, I see the Western medicine as a beautiful, beautiful thing, but it's very extreme, very fast, very quick, very invasive. And it's changed a lot in the last, let's say, maybe 20, 30 years, in the way that it used to be very open, holistic. It was also, like you say, we had our family doctor that knew the whole history of the whole family, of the environment, of the people, how they live, what you take in, how you eat, how you evolve yourself, how much sport you do. By now, maybe because our lifestyles have changed so radically and we've been more connected and globalized, and everything has gone faster, and it's more, like we said before, with the access to internet and access to knowledge and things, and less money being put into the medical sector. I find that those values have been lost. So it's not so much about trying to find the best way for the individual. It's more about just getting through with work, and it feels more like medicine has become like a factory, and people come in, they move through, and they get expelled again, and the doctors are just doctors and medical workers,
Very
they're all just
stressed.
running after it. No,
Yeah.
they don't have time to take care of themselves anymore. The patients trust them less. There's less, less time, less effort, less willingness to take your time for each patient, which I find is it's a very sad thing, really.
Yeah, and it coincides with my observation because through my work I encounter quite a high density of doctors. And often when I talk to them, I see a couple of things that are almost always there. One, they really love or have loved what they do. And they enter into it, I think almost 90+% really wanting to make a difference. And I would say almost on the same percentage, on the 90%, they're stressed out of their minds. They're really on the edge of being burned out, often carrying a weird combination of feeling short, as in they are not able to give, and simultaneously almost a little guilty that they cannot do it, but stuck in institutions that don't give them enough time or enough resources or enough freedom. But it's something I would not have anticipated unless I had interacted with so many of them. Yeah, a lot of stress, and a lot of feeling stuck a little bit. I think we were talking before, if you have invested so much to get there, your ability to do a life shift and change into a different direction is not super easy.
Very difficult.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to take that step and then to trust that it's
Because
the
you've
right thing
invested
to
so
do.
much in it, no?
Yeah. And also, like you say, it's more the reason we get into, let's say we, as doctors, I think most doctors get into medicine in wanting to help others and wanting to do some good, and it's kind of egoistic in that sense because doing something good makes you feel good, no? And the more you do it, the more you can support others, the more whole you feel, or the
Yeah.
more you feel that you have a space in the world and you have a reason to be.
Yeah, I think well understood generosity and altruism always starts from a selfish decision of,
Yeah, in one way, no? But at the same time, just for me, the most incredible thing is that if you learned and you studied and you have a knowledge that others don't have, this is not just in medicine; it's also in arts and any other cultural form, or social workers, or whatever type of work you want to take. If you have that knowledge and you have that capacity to give, it's something that makes you grow and makes you expand your own horizon and your own being. But in medicine, like you said, what is so difficult is that it's, first of all, it always has to do with stress and pain and suffering with people. So actually, what is beautiful in it is that I, as a doctor, can take that suffering and I can release it for the people. I can work with that. I can take the responsibility. I know what to do because I've learned it, I've studied it, and I can give back that calm and that resolve, in the sense that I can take the people by their hand and say it's all right. It's okay to feel that fear, and we will pass through it. And I know what to do in order to help you to come out healthier on the other side. But it's not just that, it's the whole system that we work in. The institutions, as you say, have been created to have a bigger flow of people. And by now, just with the imbalances in the world and the difficulties with financing institutions like that and politics and stuff behind it, the actual goal of medicine has changed, and therefore also the view on doctors has changed. And like you said, the stress that comes with being a doctor comes from, I see it more from the system in itself, that it's not working. We have less money, We have less time for each patient. For me, the worst is to have to, when I was still working in the hospital, to have to limit the time that you have per patient, because every patient takes a different amount of time.
The time it takes.
Yeah, some people you can finish off in 5 minutes and you know what they have, and others you need 3-4 hours to know what they will need, or where to go to, or depending on what the illness is. And yeah, and then seeing that the pressure is still on, most pressure is set on the doctor. So even the hospitals, they put the pressure on the doctor to have less time, to use up more things in order to get more money for the hospitals, in sense of diagnostics. Or in the past there was a lot of talk about patients having to stay longer in the hospital in order to get more money for the hospitals nowadays, and that's changed a lot. But yeah, there's just this duplicity that you as a doctor, you learn to become a doctor in order to help the people, but eventually all you do in a contact with the patient is report everything to the hospital. So basically you have more
So it's
time.
like authority.
Yeah, it's very hierarchical.
Yeah.
But what I mean is more, when a patient comes in, literally I have to turn my back towards them in order to write down everything I do, because of
Because you need to have the
because of the
bureaucracy in place.
law, the
Okay.
bureaucracy around it. You have to, by now, write down everything, like every step you take, everything you tell the patients for.
And you can't, let's say, record it and then do it later. But you could, but then you have to work double.
You have to, exactly. That's what we do in
Of
surgical
course, of
moments, for
course.
instance. You always have to note down everything, and
Or otherwise, the doctor will have to have some sort of secretary to do that part. But
exactly. But
there is no budget.
there's no budget for that. So mostly what you do in the hospitals is, the most work you do is bureaucratic. So you have like 5 minutes with the patient, and then 10 minutes to write it down. So what most people do is, while they speak to the patient, they already write down on the computer what they're speaking about, in order not to forget it, or in order to be faster with, or then to have more time for the patient.
And this is
themselves.
all in order to get a profit out of it, I suppose, no?
This is more for because of the law, no? If there's anything that you didn't say, or something happened to the patient, or the patient is not compliant and doesn't do what you've told them.
No, I meant that the fact that there is no time, that everything is in a hurry, is always a matter of budget, yeah?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, I find so.
Somehow naively, I always, because when I was a kid and all my life, I only went to the public hospital very rarely. Yeah? But in my mind, it kind of got stuck as a service. And then often talking with people that work in private hospitals, they talk about the ingredient of making profit and making business and making... and I somehow I never thought about it that way, yeah? But it's very present, yeah.
It is, unfortunately. And I mean, working in a institution like that, if you work as a doctor, I never really had that problem, first of all, because my team was very good. And we work with children, so with children, first of all, we're not so invasive. We only do what's absolutely necessary to do, and the rest, the children usually heal themselves. You know? This is something completely different than work with the adults, and also you have more to do with the parents and themselves, with their environment around the children. It's a different type of medicine, even if it's surgery, and surgery is surgery, but with children you deal in a completely different way. So I wouldn't be able to focus on what I'm writing down while a child is sitting there screaming. I can't really do that as in with adults. But in general, everything has just become, maybe also because we've just become way more people in the world, we're more connected, so more people come to the hospitals, and we have less doctors and less personnel. less money that gets involved, less medications,
So less resources for a
resources to
higher demand.
exactly, and therefore less time for each patient.
Do you think this is due to their lifestyle? Do you think we're just complaining more and then we feel more more fragile and we need more reassurance and then we go to the doctor more often? Or in general, we are leading lifestyles that are making us unhealthy?
I think both. I think one is that it's very difficult to generalize because I see the differences first of all in the Western world and then in any type of development country. There's a different view and knowledge of doctors and medicine as such. Here in our Western society, especially in Europe, the medical system has become kind of, it's, everyone expects it to be there and expects it to be as perfect as can be. And then they get a bit disappointed if they're not fully treated
Spoiled,
in the exactly and treated in the way they expect to be treated. And nowadays, with the way we live, I find the biggest issue is that we as people, as human beings, we have unlearned to live healthy and to take care of ourselves. So in the past, the knowledges that have been given down from our grandparents and parents in the way we live, in the natural way to take care of your health and your own beings, that has been diminished. I think most people, as we spoke before, our lifestyles has changed in a way that we have less knowledge of our own bodies, of our own minds. We are more focused on the exterior world. We want everything to be quick and fast. Even if we go to a doctor, we want a fast fix. Plus, we now go online and see, put in our symptoms, and we already know what we have and what we want and what we need as therapy in that. While most people, if you do offer a holistic approach to a certain illness or individual difficulty, I realized most people do not have the time or capacity to actually be compliant with
because
the treatments you'd have to do for yourself. Because you can do everything in a very natural way, but because we don't have that knowledge of our own system anymore, and most people don't have that time, they work 9 to 5, they don't have the time to stay at home with their children or to do hot warm therapy, to take certain plant medications or do inhalations, or it takes a lot of work to be.
You have to be part of your own healing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And in order to be part of your own healing, you have to invest time and effort and energy and learn and put the knowledge into that. And I think especially in our Western society, we have unlearned that, and we have kind of that expectancy that that is dealt with from the outside world, and we get the quick fix, And if we go to a doctor,
So that responsibility of me maintaining my health, eating well, dedicating time to the things that are important for my well-being, if someone else does it for me, then I can just fuck off and run and do other
exactly,
things that are more important for some people or other things that are more pleasant for some others. Yeah.
exactly. And at the same time, also, if that goes wrong, if the quick fix by the doctor does not go wrong, you have someone to blame or put the effort on, like being actually involved in your own health, let's say, not so much in the being ill is always a difficult thing, especially because it's also very emotional and it's scary, and but we have unlearned how to stabilize our health and to stay strong in that. So if we try to seek out help in that way, and it doesn't work because you're not involving yourself and you're
Yeah.
not putting that effort in it. It's always easier to put the responsibility on, you know, on someone
Yeah.
else or a system or anything like that.
And what is the separation? Because I was thinking, if you had to work hard, there was a time that that tool for you to work hard was still your body, or some extension of your body. But now that the money, the business, the livelihood comes from not using your body, it seems that we have created a, like the body is not necessary unless it's broken. But as long as it's basic, it seems like the division between mind and body has become bigger, yeah?
Yeah.
So then by living in our minds, we forget to maintain the base. But does it express mostly through diet? Where do you see the biggest lack in terms of the lifestyle that we have? Is it connection?
Mostly in the diet and the way we eat, but also in
The way we don't move, maybe?
exactly less sports, but also the fastness about life. Most people, when I speak to them and ask them, especially now that I do acupuncture and traditional Chinese medicine, the questions that we ask patients are completely different to Western medical medicine. Western medicine usually treats more the symptoms. We do go into finding the causes, obviously, but for the primary moments, it's to relieve pain or to release the symptoms that people have. Whereas traditional Chinese medicine, for instance, focuses much more on the actual lifestyle, how you sleep, how you feel, what what kind of diet you take in, how you move. You know, we focus a lot on that, and I've realized recently, the more I'm going into the more holistic approach, I see that most people don't live for themselves anymore. We live for an exterior motive, as in to get enough food in order to get enough money in order to support our lifestyles, which most people, not us, we live in nature. We're quite privileged in that sense that we can always be with fresh air and walk around barefoot and do our sports. We have the ocean right in front of our door, and we have all the food we need in our gardens and things like that. But most people don't have that. If you look into the cities, people live with unnatural lights, with neon lights. They go to work from 9 to 5. Everything goes really quick. They move around with their cars. They hardly have time to do any sports or be in nature or in a normal, healthy surrounding. They eat quickly because you don't have time. So
That
all
lack of
these
time
fast
seems,
food businesses and
it seems
and
to be at the center of so
yeah,
many things, yeah.
yeah, and so whatever you take in is also that which makes your body whole. So if you take in bad diet or fatty foods or things that our bodies are not made to use. These are all unnatural products, French fries or sugars or anything like that. Then obviously our energy goes lower, and we need more of any type of stimuli
And the
to.
first thing would be, if you had a little time, you would be able to see the symptoms before maybe you develop all the way until you're sick, yeah?
Yeah,
But you would feel like this food affects me in this way, and when I give myself time to go for a walk, I sleep better, or whatever it is, but it would require a certain reflection time where you can actually see
yeah,
your patterns and the results of your patterns. But if you're all day on the clock, it's very difficult to,
yeah.
yeah.
It's really difficult to focus on anything about
Yeah, like
yourself.
I've had these conversations, let's say, about relationships and looking at what you can do to improve your relationship. At some point, it's always, yeah, but it takes time. Or if you're going to develop your yoga practice, or if you're going to develop whatever it is, it takes time. And that seems to be the currency that we're all running short on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
And then
Unfortunately.
if you export that, the lack of time of us, how is that translated into the next generation? Because if already we come with this lack of time on ourselves, do we have time to pay attention to our children? Or do you see that that is also another line of lack in the next generation and the attention that they receive? Because your specialty is on children,
On
eh? You're a
children, yeah.
pediatrician.
Yes, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's maybe not. Yes, and it is mostly time actually, but it's also the stresses of life in itself, because we are so connected with the whole world by now. It's not just our. In the past, let's say from our grandparents' life, they were. You could focus on your family, on yourself and your family. You had more time in general. There were more jobs available. There was more money for every individual person. Let's say outside of the war times, obviously. And the focus was more on the natural way of living. You lived. You woke up every day. You went to work in order to get enough money to survive and to support your family. But everything was a bit slower, and you had more time for all these things because we weren't so much involved with. We didn't have phones, you know. If you made an appointment with someone, you would
Have to
either
be
show
there.
up and you had to be there, or
And
you
wait
couldn't
sometimes.
change things in the last moment, and things were much easier, simpler. You didn't have to think so much in everything else apart from the moments you were in, and that also belongs to, like, I remember with my parents when we, obviously they're doctors, so it might be a little bit different, but if we were sick, we would do everything possible in order to treat ourselves at home.
Yeah.
So even if my parents did not have time, they went to work or something, they would teach us what to do in order to support our health. And then they would leave us at home, and we would have to do the inhalations and eat these certain things, and put those warm sponge on that part of the body, and but we had the time to do so. Nowadays, I feel.
And also the appreciation sometimes, I think, because besides the time, to me, it feels I have a bit of a cold. So if I made myself some ginger, lemon, honey, it feels better than taking an aspirin.
Yeah.
It's still dealing with the symptom in a different way, but I'm somehow, yeah, first of all, I'm doing it myself in a way, and it feels an extension of maybe caring for yourself or treating yourself gently, rather than going to someone else and ask for them to fix me until I don't know. Yeah, if I don't know and I'm in need, we all have to have that humility to outsource when we are really, really in need. But yeah, it feels beautiful that you would be able to tell your children, this is the way we do it in case this happens or that happens. But yeah, that requires appreciating it and also what you say, yeah, having the time.
Yeah. And taking the time for that.
Yeah.
I find most people, like I said before, it's not so much that we don't want to do it. It's firstly our lifestyles that are not allowing us to have that time, nor the capacity to actually learn how to do that,
Yeah.
to take care of ourselves. And then secondly, and the most important, is that we don't know what it means to be fully healthy. I think
Like we
because,
don't remember it anymore.
yes,
Yeah.
because our whole worlds are, or yeah, the way we live by now, the focuses on so many things outside of our body and mind, and that, like you said, we only realize that something is going wrong when we become ill, but that is already actually way too late. Where my work, or I like to focus on right now, or in the recent years, is to find a way to teach people to go back into themselves and see themselves as a whole being. We're not just our physical body, and we're not just the pain that occurs when you ignore yourself long enough. But our hearts are connected with our soul, with our minds. And if we don't treat our stresses that occur during everyday life, as in with work, with relationships, with our children, with family, with friends, with all these things, then our systems can get so undeveloped that then illnesses can occur. And since we have lost our knowledge on that, most people I know, if you ask them about their herbal remedies or the way they can support themselves, they don't know these things anymore. Like the quickest way to deal with yourself is to just ignore everything that is happening until the moment where your bodies don't work anymore. But I find the bodies are actually just a mirror of our mind, so they can hold on to quite a lot of things and take in a lot of things until a certain point where its limit has been crossed. Then the symptoms occur, no? Then we feel a pain or something like that, and then the easiest way to cope with that is just to take a medication that that pushes that pain down, while the actual cause of it, the stress or the emotional issues or something, remains.
But I feel like, as you were speaking, I was when you were talking about home remedies, I was thinking about my mother. So my grandmother, her mother, she had so much knowledge. And sometimes I talk to my mom and she still knows a little, but she would refer to my grandma as how much she knew. But then yet my mom grew in the village, and growing in that environment, for her to move away from it and go to the city and achieve the status of whatever it meant to be in a city and live in an apartment and all that, she really, really wanted that. And later on, when I talked about living in nature, I remember one time my mom told me, but nature is poverty. And and I'm thinking, this is 3 generations. So I find very interesting that you have kind of like the holistic and then the acupuncture side, or even the appreciation of the remedy side with the more proper doctor dimension. Because one thing that I seem that we always fail is into bridging the two worlds. So there's a pendulum that swings from being a tree hugger to being a super technological city dweller. And I don't know, it seems like we could use a little tolerance to see the benefits of the other from the other side as well, because like you say, you can idolize or fantasize about how amazing it is to be healthy in the village until you have a cut and you need to go to urgencies and you die in the way because it's 500 kilometers away.
Exactly.
But the ability to appreciate what is good from both worlds and integrate it. So I wonder if are they doing that? Are they doing like attempts of bringing cutting edge new science, new medicine, and bringing in as well all that we know from the old? Besides you.
They, as in the medical system, is, yes. I find it more now listening to you. I realize that it used to be like that. That's what I mean. I think in the past, the way I saw, well,
Well, maybe, yeah. Maybe you would
my
go to the
family
doctor and they would
is
also give you some tea at the same.
exactly,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
My family is a family of doctors, and my grandfather was a doctor. He was my soulmate, and we're very similar. And both my parents. And I remember even from my grandfather was one of the best-known doctors in his environment. He worked in the countryside, so he worked in the mountains, and he did emergency work and things like that. And I remember every time I went for a walk with him or drove a bicycle around, everyone would know him, and he knew everyone. He knew the stories of every family. He knew the grandchildren, the children, the adults. He's been accompanying them for his whole life, and I remember every time we met someone on the road, I would be so proud because everyone would come with their problems to him, even if they just met walking in the streets. And he would always, first of all, be available, even if it wasn't his time of work. He was outside in the streets, and because someone came up for him for help, he would immediately take his time, sit them down, ask them questions, and then he would always offer to try it with a natural remedy first, and then follow up as a doctor and see where their ailments are and whether they've managed to cope with it themselves or not, or whether they need more treatment. And this is how I got to know medicine. Medicine is that, it's the last resort to difficulties in our lives that we cannot cope with ourselves. And
But how
in the
beautiful that,
past, we used to have that. We used to get all these remedies and knowledges, like when you have an ear infection, to put half an onion on your ear. To those things, we had that from our grandparents. They always did that. So there were those moments that someone actually needed Western medicine, were moments where Western medicine can also really make a big difference and was good. So yeah, in the past also antibiotics or something weren't necessary to use that often because people were generally healthier. We took more care of ourselves, and we had more capacity to deal with our ailments by ourselves. So the treatments were also not as invasive or as quick as nowadays, no? And now it's changing a little bit. I can see that because it's been going to just being a quick fix for every ailment. So I remember in the hospital I was a bit annoyed in working in Germany in the hospital because people would really come with everything to the emergency hospital, in a university hospital. They would come with if their child just hit their head somewhere and had a blood spot, they would rush to the emergency room, and believe that the child is going to die because the access is there and it's easy accessible. But we have, what I meant is that they have lost the capacity to know what is really an emergency, what is a really dangerous thing for themselves, or where they can cope with these things by themselves.
and that also has to do with that, what we said before, this ability of being self-reliant to a certain degree and not have this sense of being always made of glass. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
And also, I mean, it's happening with everything that we got to a certain point where it's like we passed the line. We came from, we need more hygiene, we need better medicines, but let's appreciate where we're coming from. And you're describing a moment that maybe there was some sort of symbiosis between the two worlds, but we kept going
We kept
until
rushing,
yeah. And the lack of time is also at the center of almost everything. This image of your grandfather, you said, like he had the time, yeah. And that time also allows him to have a moment where he feels part of the community.
Yeah.
It's like he's part of that environment where he's important and he's loved and he is a node of the network. Yeah.
Yeah, but also again because he took his time to be with every patient, no? So every one of his patients was like his family. He knew them better than his own kids in that way, and that I find is medicine. No matter what type of medicine we do, the most important is as a doctor is to listen, to be there when it's needed, and to know or to find out what is best for this certain individual, because not every medicine is the same. You might react to something different than your mother or your sister or your neighbor. Like not everyone. It's not so black and white as we put it nowadays, and I feel also the loss of trust in the medical system is a very big thing, which lead us to try ways of treating ourselves which are not very healthy. I see that as well. And plus, again, the illnesses and the way we live have changed as well, in the way that, like you said, with disinfecting everything. On the one side, it's good that we have that knowledge of hygiene and disinfection, especially in the medical sector. Treatments of diseases, but at the same time, what that causes at home, if you disinfect everything, like in COVID times, we realized that, no, that everyone was constantly washing their hands and cleaning themselves, not being in contact with the earth around us, with animals, with other human beings. The whole immune system just goes down, no? Like the
Yeah,
more,
because you keep this isolation.
exactly,
You keep
we
bubbling
isolate
yourself.
ourselves. We're with unnatural lights. We're outside of nature. We do not have contacts with animals or with any type of dirt. So all the children I see have more allergies. They have more difficulties with their immune system. They get sicker way more often than in the past. And I remember, I mean, in Africa, when we grew up, we ate earth. We ate soil every day. We were playing naked and outside with all the animals, and always in contact with other people, always in contact with the soil, with dirt, with,
Because that's where we come from
yeah,
eventually.
with all these things. And therefore my family, at least, and I specifically, I have no allergies. I was always quite healthy in that sense, because my system was made to be in contact with everything that can influence myself.
Yeah, because I had the same with my parents. My parents, because of that movement from the village to the city, they really took to hygiene. Yeah, so all the washing your hands and all the, always useful and always healthy. Yeah, but I could feel this. Yeah, I've always felt it. This almost running away from the natural environment because it's dirty, and needing to isolate yourself from all the dangers of the natural world in terms of dirt and in terms of different kinds of dangers. Yeah.
Yeah.
But do you see in that progression from the natural world to what you describe now, there is a human tendency of sometimes not knowing when to stop in refining something. You make it easier and then easier and then easier, and then one day you realize it's so easy that it's no longer fun. Yeah. But did you ever feel pushed from within the profession, or did you ever feel that there were interests that are trying to create this kind of situation? Did you ever, either the pharmaceutical companies or the hospital management, is there any interest in the medical profession being in the way that it has been in the last few years, or do you see just an evolution of how the tendencies of human beings are?
It's
I've
difficult
heard.
to answer because it's so many different entities. What I think most people don't understand is that the pharmaceutical company has, or pharmacies, for instance, industry, has very little to do with doctors being doctors, for instance. Yeah? The institution of the hospitals and the health system, also, they are the institution that the doctors work in, but it's not the same system. So the pharmaceutical companies, obviously, they are looking more for profits. So anything they try to put on the market is for their own profits, for the goods of
But you never
of
felt that there
money.
was a pressure of pushing this medicine instead of that medicine, or some sort of incentive that would make you do things that are not ideal for the patient.
It is sought to be that way, but it's really not. All the
Okay.
doctors I know from my side to be honest, like first of all, we have rules that we are not allowed to go to a certain just with one company or another,
Okay. Also in
and
Europe might be different than in America, no?
exactly. Most important is to know that every place is a bit different. No? And I'm speaking more from the Western
European, yeah.
European medical world. But yeah, in the past we had a lot of, the pharmaceutical reps coming to the hospitals, giving a little present, and then the doctors would take
Okay.
that medication that is known to have been that way.
And that got stopped.
But that got stopped from
Good old
lawfully
Europe.
seen. You're not allowed to take any types of bribes or.
Okay.
Even if a patient wants to say thank you to the doctor that operated them, we're not allowed to accept anything but chocolates, for instance. So in that sense, it is protected that the patients are protected that way by law. That you cannot take up one patient because of money or any type of bribes or anything like that more than others, or go for a certain pharmaceutical thing. But I know that certain institutions work with certain pharmaceuticals. So in 3 different types of if you take an antibiotic, for example, then one hospital works with that type of antibiotic and the other hospital with that type. Yeah? But it's the same antibiotic, it's just a different company rep
But
to it.
most importantly, the decision of actually recommending that antibiotic, that is
That
not
comes
forced.
from the
That comes from the doctor,
in
and
itself.
then maybe once you decide that there is
Exactly.
this brand or that brand.
Exactly. But I've heard it a lot from patients, and that's where I meant with the trust in doctors has faded or has become differently. But I think it's more because we have more access to knowledge, and now with AI telling you what to do, I have a lot of patients that come that have looked up their symptoms online first, and then they come to me and they tell me exactly what they need. So they come and say, I have this and I need that and that treatment.
And then you become the one that can give them the prescription because you have the license.
Exactly, but
then you are being
their
used in a
expectation,
way.
exactly, their expectation is that they come to me, they tell me exactly what they need, and they get what they want. Those type of patients I usually send away and say, well, if you actually know what to do, then you don't need me anymore. No, you can deal with it yourself, because again, nothing. I find it quite dangerous with the AI, especially in regards to medicine, because not everyone is the same. Not all symptoms, you cannot generalize the symptoms as such. And the actual things that we have learned as a doctor, I mean, I've studied for 10 years, and it's not just because, to get a certain reputation or anything like that. Medicine is a huge, 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 huge topic as such. You have to know loads of things. It's so versatile and so big. And even if you have the knowledge of the textbook, once you see the patient, it's a completely different world. So I studied for a long time, and then I became a doctor. And the first patient I had, I thought, I have no clue what I'm doing. No, like you learn by doing, you learn by seeing more people, because every individual is so different that also the treatment is always different. So yes,
And
the
also in the
doctors.
personal connection, there is a transmission as well that
Yeah.
it's, I guess, a variation of the placebo effect, but you feel cared for, you feel listened to if it's well done.
Yeah.
And then, I've read studies that because the doctor is doing it when there was trust, already the medicine is working, even if it was
Exactly.
a placebo,
Yeah.
because you trust that the doctor is going to support you.
Exactly.
So now if you go to the doctor with mistrust,
It has a negative effect
but
on your being as well.
I'm sure you're different, but from the perspective of the patient, last time I had a little scratch in the eye and I went to the ophthalmologist, and he was correct, but what you described was my experience. I think I was there for 10 minutes, and I think he looked at me 30 seconds of the 10 minutes, because the rest he was writing down, asked me one question, writing down. Then he put me in the machine for a second, and he was not negligent in any way, but I did feel like we were in a rush. And I did feel like he had a lot of things on his shoulders, and none of those things was I.
Yeah, that's the...
Yeah, I felt like this man is very busy, very stressed.
Yeah.
So I didn't feel like I wouldn't trust him, but whichever was the system that he was inserted in did not inspire trust.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. That's one of the big reasons I got out of working in the hospitals.
Yeah.
Because it's it's a shame it's going that way, because most doctors I know, they don't want to work like that. For us, it's a big stress and it's horrible. No, you want to focus on the people and you cannot because of all the laws behind it and regulations. And also nowadays there's more people studying medicine but less people going into medicine. So that we have loads of students that study medicine, but they go into research and all that because that gives more money and it's less stressful actually. But if you see the life of a doctor in a normal hospital here in Europe, you work like 60 to 80 hours a week. You have 24-hour shifts. You are constantly in like everyone around you needs you and non-stop, and you always have a huge responsibility because what you say is actually not just
It's
a little
interesting
support. It can
because
actually cause harm, if you do something wrong.
a lot of
So in this
responsibility.
constant stress environment, you're in...
It's interesting because I actually literally know it. Like for whatever reason, in my field, there is a lot of doctors, and exactly all that you say. Beautiful profession that they love, good money for the most part, kind of well recognized socially, and yet stressed out of their minds, often at the edge of burning out, no time.
Yeah,
Often they themselves unhealthy because they don't have the
because you
time
don't
yet.
have the time to...
It's interesting that
So,
that is the image of the person that is going to help you with your health. Yeah.
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 But that has become that way because of
Common.
bureaucratic and financial issues and just having too little personnel for too many people that come.
And then when you looked outside this frame for a more holistic approach, did you immediately land on acupuncture, or did you
No,
window shop for a bit until you found your
no,
way?
not at all. Like I said, like actually from childhood onwards, I was always quite holistically in the way I treated myself, in the way I've seen others and seen my patients, and then especially also working in the hospital in pediatric surgery. I also learned that medicine is not necessary in every case, in the sense that if an operation wasn't absolutely necessary, you wouldn't do it in a child. And, they heal most of the things themselves, and at least until the age of 10. And then it goes a little bit slower, and obviously in adults it's a bit different because we just don't have that growth factor anymore, and we don't heal as quick as before. But I realized in pediatric surgery specifically that even though we have certain things that we can do as doctors, there's no need to always give medications or to do an intervention or something like that. But I would start to recommend certain holistic or natural treatments, the ones that I've learned from my personal life or that I've read about or that I can see in compliance with in reliance of the parents and the child, what would do them best in that situation. But I realized back then, every time I offered that for the parents, most parents, they negated it, especially also already in the diagnostics. No? I'm very keen on not doing X-rays if it's not absolutely
Necessary.
clear that it will be a fracture. But even just offering that, that also means that I would have to see the patient again. So I would offer the parents and say, this is not absolutely necessary to do an X-ray. I would put the arm into a cast for 3 days, and in 3 days you come back. If the pain is still there, we do an X-ray. If not, we can take off the cast, and the child is fine. But because the parents are in stress and they have to work and they have to earn money and they can't stay at home and they can't watch their children, they would actually negate that and say, no, they want that X-ray, or they want that antibiotics, or they want that surgery, or something like that.
Because it's a little easier, yeah, or a lot easier.
It's a quicker recuperation, like it's, so even doing a surgery, you could avoid certain surgeries if the child goes to physiotherapy, if it's been seen by the parents every day, if they do certain exercises, if they take in a certain diet, if they can stay at home and not jump onto the next trampoline, and make sure.
But all of that
watch
is
them.
a proactive cooperation with life.
Exactly, you need to do a lot for that. No? And I remember trying that more and more in the hospital, because it was very clear to me that like medicine for me was always the last resort, and I'm happy to have learned it, and I know what to do if someone comes in with real difficulties, and like I said, Western medicine is incredible what we can do. We can save lives and do things that any other type of medicine is simply looked at as magic. It is magic in that sense, huh? But there's this discrepancy between, first of all, people actually accepting the fact that they have to take part in their own healing process, which is always difficult to see, and then the other side of the system not working and the doctors having too little time, that by now most doctors don't even take the time to say, look, there's a different approach. They just go, well, let's go through with this, because it's faster for themselves and faster for the
in a way it's the two sides of the same coin. Yeah.
But because of that, I was always quite I became quite skeptical of the ways we work nowadays. Also, in the time where I was working, it started differently, and then over time I realized just everything is turning to become more like less money, less time, more stresses for the doctors, for the patients, less trust in the doctors. And I was always, wondering how that came to be, what other things there are that I could do as a doctor to help my patients and also help myself. I started looking more into myself as well. And then I got out of the hospitals, and in order to move to Portugal I never really decided against medicine as such, but I was overworked, and I was reaching a own limit, and got into a burnout myself back then. And so I kind of just stepped out of the system for a moment. That's what I thought back then. Eventually, it's been a long time now. And during that time that I didn't work, I started having my own health issues, especially because of that burnout. Ever since, I've been trying to find my footing again. And because of physical ailments, my neighbor then sent me to her acupuncturist. And I'm someone, I'm open to anything, everything, anything that helps. This is what I learned in medicine. Whatever helps. As long as it's not invasive, as long as it cannot cause harm, I'm absolutely fully appreciative of everything. So I like to learn. I like to look into new ways of healing and new ways of treating patients. But until then, I've never experienced acupuncture, and I went to her acupuncturist.
Did it help?
It helped, and almost immediately. But I didn't make the connection. I just liked the doctor. He and me, we clicked immediately. He came from traditional Chinese medicine. I came from Western medicine, but he was open to Western medicine, and I was open to traditional Chinese medicine. So eventually I basically just went back because I really liked him and I wanted to learn from him, and we had this very special bond and connection.
Was he your teacher?
At first he was only my my acupuncturist, and then he became my teacher after a while.
Okay.
But because I was so skeptical, and I'm generally a very skeptical person, so I trust everything. I open up to everything, but then I want to learn more, and I want to feel into it first, and I need the own experience in things to trust it, and then I read about it and things like that. So it took me a while, but then I realized every time I go away from him, I do feel much better. I feel less pain. Everything that I've been treating with medications before, with other things, suddenly has become much better, but without any type of invasive involvement. And only after like 3 months of treatment with him, I realized really it's has to do with that acupuncture. It's nothing else in my life I have changed, and yet that has made me feel much more in tune with myself, much healthier, with less pains, less difficulties mentally and emotionally and things like that. So eventually he offered to educate me, to give me lessons in acupuncture, and that's how I started getting into it. But it was more out of my own experience with it.
Okay.
It was never, I never set my mind on I want to do acupuncture and this is where I'm going to go.
And if anyone doesn't have the background or the experience, what would you? How is the 5-10 minute version of what is acupuncture?
Well, acupuncture is also just one specialty of traditional Chinese medicine. So I see it as like in medicine.
They do a lot of herbs and teas and
Exactly.
things like
There's
that.
like traditional Chinese medicine is the oldest medicine we have in human knowledge, really. So it's a very big field. So acupuncture is just a small specialty in the big field of traditional Chinese medicine.
And in general, the aim is to maintain the person healthy before they have gotten sick.
Exactly,
Yeah? Okay.
exactly. So that's the main aim of traditional Chinese medicine, which I find absolutely beautiful, because in Western medicine we focus more on the ailments, on the illness as such, which can be quite depressing as a doctor as well. You only focus on the negative aspects and trying to heal what is wrong. No?
If there is an emergency situation, it's obviously amazing. But if not, it suggests that it belongs to a culture that does not pay attention.
I think it's more
As a system that you deal with what happens at the end.
Yeah, I think that's how we see it nowadays. But Western medicine is actually just like I said before. Normally, in the best type of world, each and every one of us would have the time and the effort and the knowledge to take care of ourselves.
So I guess it's
and
incorrect.
then only when you reach a certain limit and the illness gets too strong, or there's something that you cannot deal with yourself, then the Western medicine comes in, and then it's a great, fantastic way of dealing with illness.
So even when we say Western medicine, we are referring to kind of like the last iteration of what Western medicine has been.
Exactly.
It's
That's
really the modern kind of stressed out version of a bigger body of knowledge.
exactly.
That's what I'm understanding.
And actually, it's meant to be the last resort of, in order to help someone who is in physical difficulty. No? Whereas traditional Chinese medicine focuses on maintaining and supporting the health of a person. So there's already a different aspect to it, no? And come from two different sides. And acupuncture in itself is basically a treatment of either health or sickness in an energetical way. It's a bit difficult to describe, because basically as a therapist, I do not involve myself in the physical body of the person. The needles are used to stimulate certain parts of the body, but they do not do. We don't stick it very deep. We don't do any mechanical thing. So especially me, seeing myself as a surgeon, I'm used to involving myself in that being. No, you cut something open, you cut a person open, you change something in their anatomy, and you physically involve yourself in the process of healing. Whereas in acupuncture, all I do is I put the needles in order to stimulate a certain reaction in the person's body.
What is it that gets stimulated?
The energetical system, which is it is physiologically accessible, so you can describe it also in Western way. We've with certain researchers and things, we have become to understand that it's actually physiologically understood, or that there are ways that it functions. But in order to explain it, it's a bit, I'd have to go quite wide. So basically, what you trigger is just a certain energetical point, which gives a certain stimulation to the person's brain, and therefore the whole body and mind get do a certain reaction that then heals themselves. So basically, what I do as an acupuncturist, I see with diagnostic methods, as in seeing the pulse of the person, the tongue, the way the person is, the smell, the feeling, the skin, their color, all these things that we have lost in Western medicine. They give me insight into the person's physical and mental health, or in that sense, unhealth, or like the illness or instabilities or disbalances. And then with a needle, I stimulate certain points of meridians that then open up or close up or change the way of energy flow in the patient, and therefore stabilize health again. So in traditional Chinese medicine, we see illness not as an illness as such. It's an imbalance in the person's being as such. So we say that illness can only exist if your body is in disbalance in whatever way. Yeah? Whether it's
so imbalance would mean too much somewhere, too little somewhere else?
Exactly. It can either be too much or too little. It can be a rebellious chi. It can be an organ dysfunction. It can be something wrong that you're taking in, or a disbalance in your lifestyle, or a disbalance in your hormonal or emotional ways.
So the symptom would come to reveal a certain lack of harmony in a department of your life or your physique.
Exactly.
Yeah?
Exactly.
And then I'm going to try to correct. So not Western medicine, but when that is treated with medicine, as in chemical medicine, yeah, then chemistry would be the way to operate, the way to fix the symptom. And acupuncture does not work with chemistry, but it works with energy.
And works with energy, but physiologically seen, there is a chemical reaction to the stimuli that we give.
So when you put the needles, now I'm like nerding out, trying to like steal your knowledge. So let's say there are certain lines of energy. Let's leave it undefined, yeah. And you would the meridians, yeah, and you would identify whichever is the imbalance that you identify in the body, and then you would have a map where if you trigger this, and this, somehow there is a release that would solve that disharmony, or feed whatever is empty and release whatever is full, something like that.
Yes, to simplify it completely.
To simplify it, yeah.
Yes, it's much more complex than that, I can imagine.
But that made me feel a bit confused. So you said at the end there would still be a chemical reaction.
Yes, because physiologically seen, what you trigger, the whole aspect of acupuncture comes from the fact that how do you say, a damage to something in your body always causes healing. So any type of manipulation in your body, if you get a scratch,
Okay.
for instance,
Yeah.
if you're outside and you work in your garden and you get a scratch, what your body does is it releases fibroblasts, which are small cells, that then give information to your brain. Say
And then the white cells would
there's
go.
something
Okay.
there, and then the blood system disperses certain cells that then fix the wound. Yeah?
So then your needle would be a little wound.
Yes, basically what you're doing
A
in the Western
micro.
medical world, we have researched acupuncture in that way that it means you cause a little harm, which most people don't even feel the needle, so it's not really a harm. But anything that crosses the border of your skin is a harm to the physical body. No? So you cause a little reaction of your body by putting the needle into the skin. It doesn't go deep. You don't stick it into certain organs or anything like that, just a certain point. And then the body reacts with giving a signal to the brain that there's something that needs attention. It doesn't. Our bodies and mind, we don't distinguish between positive or negative. It's just a stimuli. Your brain notices there's something happening there. It sends out certain cells that then start to give information to other parts of your body and other parts of your cells and blood system to get the blood flowing more cells, more immune cells coming to that place, or more, depending on what it is that is being said by that little stimuli. Your body reacts on it in a physiological way. So that's how we Westerners explain acupuncture.
Would a
In
Chinese
traditional
doctor have
Chinese
a hard?
medicine, it has purely to do with the energetical lines, and it's actually really, for me, it's still impressive as a Western medical doctor. I've come to treat patients that have come to me and wanted acupuncture in moments where I would have suggested as a surgeon to, after having tried to treat it in a natural way for the last 3 months and nothing has changed, to then maybe go for the operation or for a Western medical treatment. And I've had patients that said no, they want to continue on that path. So I went on that path, and I've seen things happening and people being cured in this natural way without me really being able to explain how. I know how the treatment works. I know where to put the points. I know how to decipher the diagnostic system in traditional Chinese medicine. But the fact that it works with physical things like a cyst that can disappear, or the ailments of physical pain and things that come from a herniated disc, or something that in Western medicine you can see it's a physiological, anatomical problem and effect, and then you treat it only with needles and somehow it disappears. It's still pure magic in my mind, if you use it that way.
Does Western medicine have a way to account for what you call qi in the East?
Yeah, in that way, yes, because our whole system is made of
Bioelectricity?
yes,
Or,
yes, and any type of reaction between people and the things, and how our bodies work, and it's all in. It all has to do with certain energy levels and wavelengths, and and our blood flow and physiology. Atoms, how they move with each other. We're all made of atoms. They all just work with energy. So in that sense, yes. But the pure physiological explanation or Western medical explanation of acupuncture is very confusing, because they don't have the actual word of qi, or we don't have the same anatomical explanation for the energy lines, the energy meridians that the Chinese have explored for over 2,000 years.
Okay. So a Chinese doctor at certain point, would they resource to a more poetic language to refer to the body or the illness process?
This is what
I'm gonna try to
take the bee.
I'm gonna try to get it out.
Yeah.
But yes, tell me, do they when they arrive to that point of mystery? I'm going to take a bee that is making a lot of noise. Um, do they feel confident on the explanation, or do they themselves allow for a little bit of mystery in how they heal?
The traditional
Yeah.
Chinese doctors. Let's say it we have less
Because I can
necessity of explanation. Let's say it that way.
let me rephrase the. I can see in you the Western doctor try to explain something,
Exactly.
and I
It's,
can see
it's
the
really
two sides of
difficult.
you having a conversation, and I'm wondering when that, let's say, that inner conflict is not there, what substitutes the inner conflict when a Chinese doctor, because I've encountered some and they can be really self-confident. But what is the way that they explain themselves, the way it works? That I guess that's my, yeah. Do they resource to more of like religious explanations or
No, it's a purely
energetic thing? Yeah?
physiological, energetical, and really touchable definition to
Yeah.
how it works. Specifically
Yeah.
now the acupuncture,
But
not
they will have to
so
still
much.
justify where chi comes, or what is chi for a Chinese
Yes,
doctor?
but it's I see the difference, or why it's so difficult for me to explain is because I'm trying to explain it to Western people, and I've had that quite a lot, that they most of us that we grew up in the Western world, we're focused on the things that we can feel, that we can touch, that we can explain, that we can understand in that way. Whereas the traditional Chinese medicine specifically, but also in other holistic type of treatments, we're focused more on the outcome and the keeping a certain system going, and not so much on what is going wrong and how we can fix it. No?
Not the thing, but the process that the thing is
Exactly,
in. Yeah.
exactly. And in traditional Chinese medicine, what took me more time was not learning the different meridians and the different points, which is already like learning an anatomy book of the person, but the verbal differences. So instead of, first of all, like I said, traditional Chinese medicine focuses on the health of a person and their whole system, mind, body, soul, everything is one that we focus on treating. And we try to focus on, well, we focus on maintaining and supporting health as much as possible. I take up the symptoms of my patients. All my patients come and say, I have this pain and that pain and this thing. But I don't see it as that symptom like in Western medicine. I see it as the disbalance that is underlying that can cause that symptoms to exist. So in traditional Chinese medicine, we go about saying that your body is a healthy body until you do things, or the outside world has a certain influence on you that causes a disbalance either in certain meridians, energy meridians that go through our body, or in the way our lifestyles are. Seeing that something can come from the outside world or your emotional status, and as soon as there's a disbalance, illness gets created, but it gets created by you. Usually, apart from if there's an accident, of course, that's a different thing. But any type of illness, even cancer, or even any type of, diabetes, or chronic disease, or acute disease, or acute pain, or herniated discs, or anything like that, it originates in your body. So it means that us in traditional Chinese medicine, we believe that that disbalance in your body can then cause an illness to be created. It's like when your house is not healthy enough, in the sense of If you let too much humidity come in and you don't open the windows, then mold can exist. But that also means that your system, if it's back to being in balance, then it can fight that illness in itself, because it was the one creating that illness, no, letting that illness.
But you can see
happen.
in the way you're explaining how the worldview is required, because the minute you say it's created by you, with the kind of judgy mind that we have in the West, immediately in my mind I feel guilt. I feel like, oh, maybe I fucked up and then it's my fault. Rather than, oh, then I have the potential to heal it.
Exactly.
Immediately you feel it's my fault because it's read through a narrative of judgment.
Yeah.
So in order to read it through a narrative of empowering, you have to be inserted in a system that sees holistically life, in a way.
Yes, but I think this is our Western medical minds, because
Yeah,
in
that's what I'm saying.
traditional
Like,
Chinese medicine, or in general in any type of
they don't
holistic
see, yeah,
treatment, there is no positive or negative.
yeah.
Even an illness is not negative, necessarily seen. I see an illness as a sign that something is
Yeah,
not really good for that person in that moment.
yeah,
You know, that is in
yeah, yeah.
disbalance, not really. Let's
And
take the
even
good
when,
and bad
if I,
out of
my
it much.
memory of the Chinese doctors or even Shiatsu, Asian, they seem to be quite non-dramatic in the
Yes,
delivery. So
yes.
there is no judgment, there is no, yeah, there seems to be like, this is what's happening.
Yeah.
And this is what we can do.
It's
Yeah,
just your state in
yeah,
this moment, in exactly this moment,
yeah,
because tomorrow you might be completely different in your energetical
yeah.
way, no? And also in the symptoms that you show. But it's for me, actually, having heard that in the beginning, I also had difficulties because the language is so different. So we speak about energy meridians. Those are lines that go through our whole body, and they have millions of points on them that we can use to stimulate or block, or somehow change the energetical being of the person in that moment. And these energetical lines, they're actually, which is quite impressive, traditional Chinese medicine is 2,000 years old. And back then, when they created, or when the first drawings of the energy meridians were created, no one had ever opened up a human body. There was no surgery before, you know. But if you take a Western medical textbook, anatomy book, and put it on top of a energy meridian line, it's exactly, it goes on to the same anatomical patterns
Points,
that
yeah.
we know by now in Western medicine. It's just that their system, the energetic system, crosses many different organs. It has many different capacities. So the stomach meridian, for instance, goes from the face to the toes. So you can use all types of points for not just things that have to do with the stomach as the organ itself, but the whole energy line that it crosses. And so we speak a lot about liver fire, or wind pathology, or something like that, which is a completely different way of forming, of speaking about disease. In Western medicine, a disease is a disease. It's negative, it's bad, it has symptoms, it is something that we have to fight often.
And it's very well defined. It's
It's
like
very well
this thing.
defined as, exactly,
It's
as
not a
one
part of a
thing.
process, it's this thing that you
Exactly.
have. You're
Exactly.
like this, you have
Yeah,
it. Yeah.
exactly. And in traditional Chinese medicine, like I said, again, we're not focusing on the actual symptom. The pain is a symptom of maybe an underlying liver fire. So what you do in the treatment is to try to release the heat in the body. Someone who has too much heat can cause a disbalance that then can create a certain pain syndrome in the body. You know? So it's a completely different way of seeing a human being, of their well-being, their health, their system as such.
And is it easy to combine them? Or do you go like, okay, this is very clearly you need, I don't know, surgery, and this is very clear. I can do it with acupuncture. Do you ever find yourself weaving the two systems together?
Well, this has been my focus in the last years. My goal is actually to create a holistic clinic. I would like to have that, a place I could invite people to come to in order to stabilize their health, where me and other therapists, including you and other people who do more natural ways of sustaining the health, could support people to learn, to educate themselves, to live a healthier life. And then me as a Western doctor, and maybe other doctors as well, would be the ones observing and following the process. This is what I do right now. So my patients come to me for medical reasons, and normally I then look at them. I just decipher the situation. If it's a absolute medical emergency, then I would either treat it myself in the Western medical way, or I send them to the specific doctors that they need to see. But if it's something that is treatable in a holistic way, I then try the other approach. So I either offer acupuncture, or I'm also working with a lot of different therapists. I send my clients to them, so I try to help them to find the therapy or the type of treatment that best suits them and their situation and their physical, emotional, and energetical capacity of their bodies. And then they always come back to me, and I observe them and see if a limit gets crossed, as in the herbal remedies or the acupuncture or the physiotherapy or something haven't managed to get their balance back. Then I would do a Western medical treatment, and this is for me the most natural approach. So it doesn't cause me much effort to feel that way. For me, it's the most automatic thing
Well, it
that I
feels you
would
look at the
see.
situation and you evaluate it with kind of like a free template, and then you choose
Exactly.
accordingly,
Yeah. So
rather than be this is the one way I
yeah,
do, or this is the one.
exactly. So I've already come to a point after leaving the hospitals where it's really very clear only the medical ways are supported by the system as such, and the people, the patients themselves, to seeing how much good we can do by trying just to open the possibilities of maintaining health, right? And in traditional Chinese medicine, that's why I got along so well with my master, my professor, because he also saw that, or he taught me really in traditional Chinese medicine that, like I said before, a disbalance can create illness, can cause an illness to exist. That also means as long as your body is still capable of dealing with that disbalance, you can also release that that illness. You can get rid of that illness until a certain point. That means if you have liver damage, physiological liver damage, and therefore certain symptoms because you've been drinking your whole life, and you find holistic ways of treating that and the symptoms and everything like that, but you don't stop drinking, then obviously your body will come to a certain point where it cannot heal itself anymore. And that's where I find Western medicine is incredible, because we can still do quite a lot and treat a lot of these disbalances that are not capable to be dealt with anymore. Cancerous issues as well. You can heal certain disbalances in your body and get your body to stabilize itself in a way that it can then heal certain parts of illnesses or chronic diseases or issues that we cannot explain in Western medicine how that got healed. But if you tend to ignore those issues and you do not deal with them early enough, and you do not do your lifestyle change, and you do not,
Eventually, you are in a situation that
you
this.
become you come to a point where the system basically swoops over to being ill. and then the illness stays and you cannot
So you would have to start by patching that up and then
Exactly.
walking your way back into
Exactly.
health. Yeah.
And their traditional Chinese medicine cannot help anymore.
It's too
and
late.
It's just too late. So for me, there's no
Conflict.
there's no questioning anymore what becomes what, no? Like, and it's very clear that if someone comes with a certain disbalance, I will try my best to help them to find the therapy and the method that helps them best to stabilize themselves. And once that limit gets crossed, that the bodies can't heal themselves anymore, it's very clear that Western medicine is the best approach in that moment. And I've had really good results with that, incredible results.
Yeah, I think the flexibility of mind that allows you to mix according to your observation. Like if this works here and this works there, then it's nice that you feel open enough to choose from both worlds.
And I see the patients also,
As well.
their trust in me and the knowledge and
Well, we are
in
Western
themselves as well.
over here.
It helps a lot.
Yeah.
It helps a lot.
Yeah, because also it's our culture, so it's nice to be able to. I mean, I think at this point we are all very inviting of Eastern wisdom, yeah. But at the same time, this is our culture where we grew on. What is your, from whichever side, okay? You choose how you answer this, but what is your opinion on the effects of the mind itself in health? Not taking a medicine, not needles, not changing your diet, not exercising, not the healthy lifestyle, but directly the attention focus of your mind, the quality of your mind, the levels of stress. How big a role does mind, regardless of other parts of the treatment, have in health?
It is all.
Okay.
For me, it's really from everything I've seen and experienced. Obviously, physiologically, you can explain certain things and difficulties in people. But I find the mind is the most important tool that we have to live in general and to live a healthy life as well, and also to deal with illnesses. It's just that we've been ignoring it, especially in our Western world. It had in the past. Now it's I can see it with our lifestyle and our social lives that things like mindfulness training or meditations or yoga or something have become quite hip and wanted in our society. But in the past, it wasn't. It wasn't like we kind of ignored the part or that our brains, that our minds play in everything in our world. But I find especially in regards to any type of medicine, treating your mind and first of all, not treating, but acknowledging the fact that your mind has control of everything that your being involves is the first step to any type of treatment, any type. So most of my patients nowadays, actually, when they come, I realize some of them don't even want or need a treatment. They just need a space to rant or to be able to be heard or to let go of their thoughts or feel into their minds, no, and their
And once
beings as such. They just need to talk things out or feel seen, feel heard, and mostly even if I wouldn't put the needles or if I wouldn't give the medication, I'm quite sure they would feel much better if they'd left the place, just
But how
because their
important
minds
that you
weren't
have the
heard.
time and that you can give them that human component as well. Yeah.
Yeah. For me as well, it does a
Yeah.
big difference in it helps me as well treating my patients with
I
that.
think
No? With
well
more
understood, the teacher teaches for himself and the doctor heals herself. I think that's what we're doing. Yeah. Yeah. So you would, let's say, if someone is facing difficult recovery, you would include, let's say, some sort of mindfulness or meditation or breathing exercises as part of the process.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes. That would be most important, actually.
Yeah, because if you are filled with negativity in your mind, that is the chemistry that your brain is releasing as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, if you stop trusting or you stop believing in your own capacity of healing, then your body cannot heal. Like, and I think in most situations, like I spoke before, my favorite moment in medicine is really the first connection with patients, especially with children, because they're very. That's why I love working with children in medicine, because they do not think. They're not stuck in their mind. They feel whatever their mind is telling them, no? Like, but they do not question things. They do not want to. They do not have the need to understand it, and therefore also their suffering is very different. So children just they live in the moment. If they feel pain, they feel pain. They scream. They want the attention. They need to figure out how to deal with that. And as soon as they as we doctors or the whoever releases that pain, they go back into their normal being. So a child with a broken arm, in the moment it's broken, they scream, they yell, but as soon as you take away the pain, they would go back jumping on the trampoline.
So they will not carry that fear with themselves.
The second they get out of surgery, they don't think about, oh, I've just had surgery, I have to suffer. Whereas us adults, when we have surgery, it takes us 5 days to even just sit up after a surgical intervention, because we have the belief that we have to suffer because it was a big thing. Yeah? The knowledge of just knowing what has been done to our bodies make a big difference. So taking that from children also means that if you deal with if we adults would put ourselves back into a child's being, with less thinking, less judgment on why things feel the way they feel, like, as in, if we get hurt, we adults immediately go into our brains, oh, that was a dangerous thing to do. Now I got hurt, and therefore I have to do this, and therefore I have to do that, and that's why I'm suffering, and that's why I feel bad, and we get scared, and
There's a lot of interpretation.
exactly, yeah, and so that is the mind, that then starts playing the tricks on us, and as soon as we put our attention on a certain pain, that pain gets worse. If we put our attention on feeling sick, then we actually get sick. Like we can do a lot of harm by knowing too much, and putting our mind's focus on a certain difficulty in our life or in our physical body. Whereas when you do the opposite of just letting go, and in Buddhism and in traditional Chinese medicine and mindfulness training and all that and meditation, we do exactly that. No? You try to accept anything that is happening, and focusing more on neutralizing everything instead of giving it a certain
But
value.
your health is a good test, because for everything else, I have a bit more money, I have less money, I have more or less many things.
Yeah.
But when it's your health, this of staying positive, it really becomes, you are at the edge of what you can.
Yeah.
So I think it's good that you train it before, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But what most people don't understand is that you have all the influence on your health. So even when you are sick, the status of your mindset is what I believe is what can help you to get out of that illness or stabilize your system again. If your mindset is set on, I can do this, I can overcome this, and I trust my body, I trust my mind to do its work and to be receptive of whatever treatment I'm going to give it, or not even treatment, just the way I deal with myself now, and giving space to the thoughts of feeling scared and in feeling into that pain. Pain, for instance, is a perfect example of our mind working perfectly. If something is damaged in your body, your mind will make it cause pain, and the pain is there to give you the information that you shouldn't do that movement, or you should pay attention to that part of your body because there's something wrong, and you shouldn't put your weight on it, and you shouldn't lift heavy things, and you shouldn't do that. But nowadays, we've just gone over to fighting it with pain medication in order to not feel that pain anymore.
Then you don't have the
And
information.
your brain doesn't get the information that that movement shouldn't be done. But your brain is already doing that work of healing yourself by showing you, hey, if that hurts, do not do that movement. Just sit still. So you wouldn't even need a doctor or an acupuncturist or a natural remedy.
But you would need time to
If
make life changes.
Exactly. You would just need to focus more on what your brain and your body is telling you. No? Like the body is giving that info because your mind has already come to the conclusion that there's something dangerous in the body, and is just trying to do everything in its capacity to make yourself aware of that moment, no, of that disbalance.
Yeah, and then if we continue talking about the mind, we cannot really not talk about this. So what is your experience in how technology, especially the phones, social media, maybe AI lately, how has influenced, because you have had the perspective of children, and I don't know, you're young, but maybe when you started working, there was not so much exposure for children, all the devices, no? How is this affect, or maybe, I don't know if you have seen a before and after, or at least you have seen the midst of it. How is that affecting people in general? But I guess, because you have said a couple of times, I think you have mentioned like almost like children medicine is a different thing, like it's a different thing, yeah?
Absolutely.
So both, but how is it affecting children?
In a massive way. For me, it's one of the, well, on the one side, obviously, with all the access and information that we can get, can be a very positive tool. But I think it's used very wrongly in our modern world, in the way that for children, but also for people in general, any type of electronic tool, first of all, because of the wavelength, the energetical system, we are like in contact with phones and computers and televisions and stuff. We can see in the Western medical world that it has an influence on our cells, on our body structure.
So it's
all
not
that.
just the way it affects, let's say, your cognition, but a Chinese doctor would say it affects your qi.
It definitely affects your qi. You can see it mostly in people. What I see, it changes the habits of the people during the day, and has massive influence on their sleeping patterns. It has a massive influence on our like our ways of thinking, on our brain functions. We can see it, for instance, in people who had a concussion or something. If you then look at a flimmering screen, it's horrible for the eyes. It has a really, really big influence on our brain functions, especially if the brain is not or in some kind of jeopardy. And I find in children specifically, it leads to them de-evolving. I can see mostly because they are just being distracted by maybe games on the phone, or being over phones specifically, but also the computer games and things like that. I can see that, first of all, most children nowadays, they have less knowledge of their bodies, how they work. They're less fit. Children should not be overweight or have difficulties moving their limbs or difficulties climbing up a tree or something. But most children do nowadays. They don't know how to use their bodies. They're not active. They get a lot of chronic diseases and allergies and all these things, like social diseases, we call them, like diabetes or overweight or anything like that, because of the ways that they're not moving anymore. Instead of going outside, they sit on their phone. They sit. They have difficulties with their thumbs, with their arms, their neck. So physically, they get more disabilities, and then also cognitively. Most children then are in constant connection with their phones or computers or televisions. You can see they're less creative. They have less capacity of expressing themselves. A lot of children, especially if they start with very young, already being confronted with electronic equipment, you can see that they grow less in their spiritual and mental capacity. They're less evolved, really. They have difficulties with speech. They have difficulty in every aspect of physiological and psychological growth. And it's been a massive change.
It's sad also because even if you point this, at any given moment, the child is addicted to the device.
Yeah.
So if you
That
try to
comes
take
into
the
play.
device out, maybe if it would be substituted with a healthy lifestyle for another 6 months, then the child would be happy and look back and yes, that was a good decision.
Yeah.
But initially, they're going to protest because that's become their new normal.
Yeah. And I find it very sad because actually any type of device, also for us adults, it's see that a lot in my acupuncture clients. Every time I ask how they sleep, they actually sleep well, but they don't sleep because they end up watching series until 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. And then they wonder why their bodies cannot go back into the calm and the rest that we need. And with children, seeing that as, imagine a child not getting the rest they need because they're in constant need of that attention, and also the fact that we don't have to think anymore. The computers, the phones, AI, series, television, all these things make us just sit stupidly in front of something that is a constant influence on our brain.
And it never stops.
But it never stops. It's constant. It's a physiological and mental stimuli that make us want more. It's almost like it is an addiction. But it actually causes us to think less, to grow less, to evolve less, to stagnate in a way that I find very dangerous for our own human being, for well-being.
In this holistic clinic of yours, will you have an education program to deactivate the children and unplug them? Because like the way you are describing it, I almost feel like the family should go to some sort of education.
Yeah.
Because it feels like you need support.
Yeah.
Like individually, you would have to face decolonizing your mind from the phone, almost like cleaning up from drugs.
Yeah.
It's almost that, like, I'm thinking if I can do it kind of relaxed, looking at it a little less, but the last few weeks I'm thinking maybe I do something more decisively, like it's not like I'm all day in the phone, but I feel like more than I want. And I'm thinking like, what kind of strategy would I... But if it's a family and they're little kids and the whole family is in this dynamic, the parents don't have time, they give the devices to the kids end up addicted. Even if you tell them no, all their friends are on to the same thing. Exactly. So it's also some sort of social pressure. In order to change that pattern and that habit, there seems to be require some sort of strategy. It's not just one day you say, okay, let's look at it less. Like you would have to invest time, energy, and...
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's where we come again to the beginning of our conversation. It's we have everything that we need to support our health and our children's health, especially. You know? It's just that we need to make that effort. Anything in our lives in order to maintain health also implies that you put that work in it yourself.
Yeah.
And with children specifically, I don't know, but I can only see or compare the outside world to how I grew up, and I grew up in a little village in the middle of nowhere in Africa, and we didn't have games or toys or phones or computers or anything
And
like
dirt
that. We
on
had
each other.
dirt and all the trash that we found around. So us as children, we would run around, and as soon as we saw a Coca-Cola bottle or something, we'd make some small cars with it and put sticks on them and drive around. Or I remember those the tires. You know, if you
And you
found a
put some in
tire,
there.
we made races with them. You know,
Yeah.
who could switch the tires fast. We'd be creative. We would make banana tree houses and make fires in them. And when the cockroach invasion came, we would make those little slingshots and shoot off the cockroaches and then burn them on the fire and have our little chips to eat with that. You know? So us as children, I grew up like that, being creative with whatever you found and being in that community of other children. You know, you communicated, you ran around, you moved your body, you confronted your brain nonstop in the sense of, I mean, yeah, if you sit out here now as a child and you have no plastic toys or no phone to deal with, a child's intuition is to find something that makes them happy. And they will always do that. Let it be a stone that they're invested in. Or
And also because you have to face that moment that you are a little bored and your mind is kind of blank, and you get past the gray forest, and then there is something on the other side. But if the minute you begin to get into that space where you are going to be bored, you have something that rescues you from that feeling, then you're going to grow scared to that feeling. But that feeling is the preamble of something bigger, yeah?
yeah, and I don't find boredom is a difficult word because it's actually nothing, it's not really negative.
No, it's an
Boredom
opportunity,
is
yeah?
just a state of being, meaning that for once you just don't do anything.
Yeah.
And like I said, I think most children I know that grow up naturally without all these electronic influences, I don't see them being bored. They are interested, and children naturally want to learn. Like all the children I know that have their own, that have the freedom of going and exploring their own worlds, they are in need of learning. They go around, they want to learn, they want to take up everything they find. So if they see a plant, they will study it on their own. If they see something movement, you know, they will try to reciprocate that. They will try to mimic certain things in their natural environment. But we as adults, or our social way of living, we have taken that away from ourselves and from the children. Like I said in the beginning, when a parent comes in with their hurt child and into the hospital and they see a doctor, the normal reaction nowadays is to put the child on the stool and give them a tablet or a phone to calm them down. Whereas that actually physiologically does exactly the opposite. What the child would need is for the mom to sit there, take them on their arm, and make them see that you are fully involved with them in the situation that they are. No?
Yeah,
Like,
and
no,
develop a sense of communication with
exactly,
life. Communication,
exactly.
like this, what you were saying before with the children running around. The main thing is that you are interacting with the environment,
Yeah,
the world, life, nature, and with each other.
yeah,
And then that becomes a normal extension of the way you think of how you will strategize with any problem. You will get involved with the problem. You will play with it. You will try to understand it. But if all you want to be is saved from the problem, that someone will remove it away magically, then your own interaction, your own desire to play with life gets dampened, and then you become passive. A
Exactly.
passive at the end of something that someone else is going to support you. And if the parent becomes like that with the child, I think a very important link between them gets broken, because parenting families is nothing else than a group of people that are playing together.
Yeah.
So if we decide that we don't play, then there is no together.
Yeah. But I think it goes much further than that, no? Like we have the saying that it takes a village to
Definitely.
to have a child grow up, and that comes from the past. I grew up like that, and
How was that when you had a village?
well, to be fair, if it was the most
Amazing.
natural and most amazing thing I can imagine. So I'm super grateful for my parents that I got to grow up like that. And it was only way, way later that I realized that that's not the normal in our Western society, because we've then moved quite a lot. But now looking back, and especially the last years that I've been more conscious of my lifestyle and my emotional and psychological health and things like that, I started realizing that I've never in my life again felt so good and comforted and supported as when I was a child living in that African community. And what I can remember is that we as children, I mean, I was lived in with my godmother in that little village, and we were always, all the children were together, and then the parents were usually working, and the grandparents, the older people, were the wise people in the village that were confronted for all the knowledge. No? So basically, the children hardly saw their parents in itself. My parents also worked in the hospital, so I was mostly with my godmother and with the other children in the village. But I remember the older children watching the youngest ones, the middle children doing certain chores with their parents. Everyone had their role, you know. And every time the children were together, there was one adult that was there, paying attention, but that adult wasn't necessarily a mother or a father of the children. Was just one adult of the community, watching over all the children, while the older children watched the youngest ones, while the middle ones had their roles in
Literally, it
taking
takes
care.
a village.
Exactly. So, and as soon as that adult moved away or had something to do, another adult would come in to watch the whole pile of children. No?
Also because the
And so everyone learned with everyone. Everyone had their own responsibilities. Everyone has their role in that society. And if you had something going on, or if you needed something, you would go to the chief or to the old people, you know, and ask their wise interpretation of things. And your parents would actually be the ones working and gaining the money to support the families, or not even the money, the food and the water and, you know, the actual life. So I think, just the fact that we have gone away from that, and our societies have gone to being mother, father, child, and everything is evolved around that child. And nowadays I see parents struggling with working nonstop and then driving their kids to all these extracurricular activities, and you actually have to make dates, children's game dates, you know, to play dates for them to actually meet and be social with their kids around. For me, it's a very strange thing to know that you have to make an effort and drive your child around in order to be as natural as possible. No?
Yeah, sometimes, especially in the city, when you see a big building of apartments, and I imagine everybody has all the cutlery and all the plates, and there's like a bubble, a bubble, a bubble, a bubble.
Exactly.
Sometimes you don't even know their names.
Exactly, and you all live separate.
And you give so much responsibility to a little family to grow a child by themselves, which they will never go past isolation.
Yeah. And I find it's a super stress for the child as well. Imagine all decisions, everything around your world lies on you as a child, without understanding the fact that you have all that responsibility. I mean, if it's just mother, father, child, and it's beautiful that the focus is on the child, it's find it very privilege that we can focus so much on the needs of our children. But a child is normally, like in any type of natural environment, also seen in animals or in herds or in our natural human way. A child would always just follow what is being shown to them,
Yeah.
no? In their environment.
How did they do, or do they deal with individuality? Because I guess at least the narrative that we have is that we separated ourselves from that collectivism in order to develop ourselves individually and be special.
Exactly.
Was it a lot of punishment from your perspective in this kind of setting to those who were different? Did you see that if there was a kid that was gay or louder or whatever, or a grown up that was a little exotic, did you see that then the village would judge, or did you have an intuition that there would be a tendency to include the difference? Is it true that we need to isolate ourselves to be individuals? I guess that's the question.
I don't believe so. No. In my memory, but again, these are my memories of my childhood. I'm not 100% sure if that's true. But I mean, seeing myself, I was
You
the
were,
strange one.
yeah, you were the
I was
strange
the
one,
only
definitely.
white, fat little baby.
You were fat?
I was really fat. As a baby,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
I could see those pictures of me on the arms of those skinned African women. But I was fully included in the community, especially children, anyways.
Yeah.
And anyone who belongs to their community, even with any type of health issue or difficulty or disability or something, I've never seen any type of judgment in that way. It was much more
Inclusive and
inclusive
warm.
than
Yeah.
our modern, more individual world,
Yeah.
as I can see it. What happened a lot was the judgment. So if anyone from the outside or in town, in the village themselves, if anyone got caught stealing or something, there wasn't a judge to deal with that or a system that would deal with that. It would be the
The
people.
village,
So
yeah.
the village would come together and really fight that person off or something like that. So the self-judgment was much stronger in that sense.
Accountability depends, yeah.
Accountability and things like that. But that has to do with the fact that there was no hierarchy in the political way. But no, I find it actually the opposite. The more like the more, whole a community is, the less judgment there is for anyone being a bit
And eventually
stranger. No?
we will need to do what we were talking before about being able to put the qualities of two different things together. There must be beautiful things from that system, and maybe there is something amazing within what we have created, the fact that we can have freedom, yeah?
Yeah.
But obviously, this particular system is very imbalanced. If we just look at our health, it's showing left and right that we are getting ourselves sick.
Yeah.
So we will need to modify it in one way or another.
Exactly. Yeah, I find actually this individualism that you've
Yeah.
been speaking about, I personally find that quite dangerous. First of all, for our own health and for our own happiness, really, but also for the world, because we're not meant to be individual. We're not meant to be alone. We're herd animals. We're supposed to be in an environment being and dependent on each other in an emotional and physical way. No?
Yeah, it's a journey. I probably, when I was younger, I would have considered myself quite individualistic in the sense that I felt judgment. I was the weird one. And maybe also when you are forming your personality, you see yourself more as a victim than you are. Yeah? But I did feel at a time in my life that I had to move away from my country and find my ways and not follow what the masses were doing or what the group was doing. So I can actually recognize myself in that, but pulling from my individualism, the conclusions that I arrive is that we need to collaborate more. I think if you pull from the thread long enough, you realize that, what was the movie? This guy that goes in nature to live alone, I don't remember.
Into the wild or
Yes,
something.
and then he dies alone, and he realizes that the main thing was that he wanted to share his experience, and he dies alone. So I think that is the full journey, when you go search for your identity, and in the search of your identity, you realize that you are part of a collective.
Yeah, I just thought when you spoke about your childhood and the individual, I don't think that's individualism. What I see as individualism are the people nowadays that actually have the privilege of being able to focus themselves solely on themselves and their well-being and their growth and things.
Isolationism almost.
Exactly. Whereas what I see in you is, as a teenager, as a young person, we have that tendency. Even if you were living in a tribe, you will always try to expand from that. You will always try to seek the opposite. That's the natural way,
The walkabout, no?
Yeah, yeah. It's like in any animal herd, in any animal kingdom, no? Like we always have those moments where we grow and you try to find your own being until you find your own tribe again. It's
But it's a very obvious observation in life, what the Buddha said, I have seen that nothing exists without everything else. And it is like that. It doesn't matter where you look in the garden, you look in your group of friends, you look economically, and we are all connected. And the more we become global, the more connected. So without looking at that, we're hurting ourselves, and it shows in our health.
And I also find, I think also, maybe it's a bit wide stretched, but I think one of the big issues why the medical systems are so overwhelmed is also because we are too individual and too separated. We're not helping each other out so much anymore. Also the depression rate, the difficulty of everyone being diagnosed with ADHD and pain syndromes and all that comes from mostly from our mental state, no? From being lonely and lost in this ever so fast moving world, while our own beings and our own like natural necessities are not being taken care of. No? We're not meant to walk the world alone, and we're not meant to be a super individual being. We, for our minds and our body, we need that care and love and attention, and also the input, and also the negative things, and also
and also you end up
the
resting.
differences.
You can rest a bit as well, because by trying to express your uniqueness, and don't take me wrong, I've done it all my life, but you also rest at the end of that process, when you accept that you are a cell in a bigger organism. It also gives you a sense of the best way of humility that I can describe. Right, let me open it. As I open for the mister, usually at this point, I ask you if anything that maybe it was important to say we have forgotten, or if, now that I think I have run out of questions, it's
Already 2 hours.
so, of the subjects that we have touched, is something that you think you would like to say, or anything important that you think it got forgotten or left behind?
Well, I think the most important for me, and especially now in this conversation, is to explore and know the fact that there are other ways to deal with things, whether it's with life in itself, with a society, with electronic equipment, or our health. That there's always some, there's always an option that we have, and I would like to focus more on. Yes, thank you. Thank you. Yes. on finding for everyone, for any type of emotional or physiological issue, we can always find our own way of healing through just looking what's there. There is so much more than the eye can see or what that society tells us. No? Like also the fact that I moved out of this very strict medical way and opened up to other type of treatment forms, for instance. No, like this is possible for anyone, and there's not one thing that is right or wrong. Everyone, we have the capacity and the options in the world to find what truly fits to every individual.
And by getting creative about it, then you also get involved with it, and then you also, that element of the mind, you get more invested in your own recovery than just waiting for someone to fix you.
Exactly, yeah.
And once again, if you do it that way, because you are trying to be creative and you are trying to get involved, you are more likely to involve the community because you will call someone, and then
Exactly.
and if two people that live alone are, at least me, quite solitary, they keep insisting in the importance of communities. Yeah, I have seen that even against my own tendencies.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, likewise. It goes really fast that you just isolate yourself without really realizing how.
Because every time that I have put myself out of my comfort zone of wanting to be alone because I'm having a bad day, or because I've always felt happy afterwards that I did it.
Yeah.
Every single time, And like I have said here sometimes before, when I think suffering, it also has a solitary part to it, that you have to go in, and whether it's physically or mentally or emotionally, deal with your own victim, but there is a point to where you need the village.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And for our physical and mental well-being specifically. Absolutely. A village and these animals.
And a dog, or animals. Listen, animals are amazing.
Animals are the
the
best,
way
especially when you live alone.
the way they help you regulate your nervous system, but even if you walk and you get past some cows or whatever, like animals or the birds, or it's like this, to really feel that we are part of the natural world is such a complete mind shift than to think that you are separate, like a piece of nice technological plastic. It's not like that.
And in animals, if you're nowadays, not many people have that connection, but if you're really open to them, they reflect everything in you. You don't need to pay hundreds and thousands of dollars for your psychologist anymore. You just look at your dog and you know what state you're in. Wow.
Maisha, it's been a pleasure.
Likewise.
Thank you. It took us a while to schedule it properly, but I'm very happy that we kept chasing it, because it's been a pleasure.
Me too.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Maisha. And Moe.
That's fine.
Okay. Thank you for listening. More next time.